Fly over Jezero Crater, and the ground tells a story that should not exist. Spread across the basin is the outline of an ancient river delta. Branching channels split and reconnect. Sediment fans spill outward. The shapes look familiar because on Earth, landscapes like this are built by flowing water, not by chance. Then the image cuts to the same place today. The water is gone. What remains is a cold, dusty basin sitting under a sky that cannot support liquid water on the surface for long. Nothing flows here now. Nothing carves new channels. The landscape looks frozen in the middle of a process that ended a very long time ago. And Jezero is not an exception. Pull back from the crater, and the scars keep appearing. Across Mars, thousands of miles of valley networks cut through the terrain. Ancient drainage systems stretch across the planet. More dry deltas emerge from the dust. The pattern is impossible to ignore. This was not a single lake, not a brief flood, not one isolated wet spot. Something once allowed water to move across Mars on a planetary scale. That changes the question completely. Mars is often treated as a dead world that never had a chance. But these landscapes point to something far more unsettling. A planet that could support rivers and lakes is a planet that operated under fundamentally different conditions than the one we see today. Water is no longer the claim. Duration is. A flood can leave scars. A climate can leave systems. Mars is covered in systems. The mystery gets deeper when the camera drops to the surface. Inside Gale Crater, Curiosity examines layer after layer of sediment, stacked like pages in a book. The rover found clay minerals layered directly beneath sulfate salts. This chemical transition is a planetary ledger. Clay forms only in long-lived, neutral water. Sulfate salts form as that water evaporates. This sequence proves these lakes did not just exist. They endured for tens of millions of years through cycles of evaporation and recharge. Water was not simply arriving, it was staying. And that creates a new problem. Long-lived lakes need conditions that can keep liquid water stable. They need an environment that works day after day, year after year. Yet, when we look at Mars today, we see exposed, barren terrain beneath a thin atmosphere that cannot maintain those conditions. Which means the question is no longer where the water came from. The question is, what happened to the ancient Martian atmosphere that once allowed an entire climate system to exist, and why that support system disappeared? Picture early Mars wrapped inside a vast, invisible shield. Around the planet, the ancient Martian magnetic field stretches into space. Streams of charged particles race toward Mars, then bend away. And there is evidence that this ancient shield was real. When scientists mapped parts of the Martian crust, they found regions still carrying magnetic signatures from a distant past. Those remnants suggest Mars once generated a large-scale magnetic field, functioning just like Earth's magnetic field does today. Suddenly, the explanation appears clean. Mars used to look like Earth because it had protection. Then that protection disappeared. For a moment, it feels like the mystery might be close to solved. Then a spacecraft arrives with a way to test the story. MAVEN watches the escaping Martian atmosphere directly. It detects atmospheric particles leaving the planet right now. The loss is still happening. But the data revealed something far messier than a single switch being flipped long ago. That creates a problem. The magnetic field explanation makes a prediction. Remove the shield. Remove the atmosphere. Remove the water. Case closed. Maven does not show a closed case. The death of the magnetic field wasn't just a lost barrier. It was an execution. Without that field, the solar wind slams directly into the upper atmosphere. Charged solar particles strike atmospheric atoms like billiard balls, knocking them into space. This is a mechanical stripping called sputtering. Worse, without a thick atmosphere to block it, solar ultraviolet radiation cuts through to the surface, breaking water molecules H2O apart. The lightweight hydrogen escapes into space instantly. The heavier oxygen remains behind, binding with the iron in the soil. The planet didn't just dry out, it literally rusted, turning into a red desert. The loss was not an event. It was a slow, multi-layered trap where one failure triggered the next. Now the final consequence comes into view. Place ancient Mars beside modern Mars. Over immense spans of time, atmospheric pressure fell lower and lower. Today, Mars has less than 1% of Earth's surface atmospheric pressure. At this pressure, the physics of water changes entirely. The boiling point drops below the freezing point. If you poured a glass of liquid water onto Mars today, it would violently boil and freeze at the same time. The environment that once supported rivers no longer exists. The rivers disappeared because the world that sustained them disappeared first. Mars did not become a desert because water vanished. It became a desert because the architecture required to hold water collapsed. The dry riverbeds are not evidence of missing water. They are evidence of a missing world.